months after Election Day, there are still a lot of people who can't believe Donald Trump lost. Well, lots of Republicans, and there's a good reason. Republicans can't believe Trump lost the election because they worked so hard to rig it for him, and they're already trying to rig the next one. In fact, just yesterday, the Florida legislature passed a law to do just that. How did we end up in a democracy with so many rigged elections? Let's find out in a segment called How Did We Get Here? Voting is the cornerstone of any democracy, but currently in the U.S., 361 bills have been introduced in 47 states to restrict access to voting. These days, restricting voting is more popular than TikTok or adding a Y to Braden. These voter suppression bills are designed specifically to curb the ways that Black people and other likely Democrats like city dwellers and working class people vote. For example, right now, 33 states are trying to limit early voting and absentee voting, both of which are favored by voters on the left. There are also bills designed to restrict mail-in voting and to make voting lines longer by cutting back voting hours and the number of voting machines. And then, while you're waiting in that long-ass line, they want to make it illegal for anyone to hand you a snack. That's not a joke. The Georgia legislature recently passed a bill that makes it a misdemeanor to give food or water to voters waiting in line. No snacks. That's a real-life bill that passed, and I already know one voter who's pissed about it. All these laws put together are designed to make voting so time-consuming that working-class voters can't afford to do it. But voting shouldn't be difficult and time-consuming and bogged down by a bunch of complex rules. What is this, a vaccine appointment? Now, Republicans say they're passing all these laws because they're concerned about voter fraud. But voter fraud is a fake problem that Republicans made up. You know how I know? Because Republicans can't find any. Republicans filed 50 court cases arguing that voter fraud cost Trump the election and lost all of them. Trump lost 50 court cases. That man has more L's than Laverne's wardrobe. Republicans are out here looking for voter fraud like some of you are looking for a single man with a bed frame. Honey, it don't exist. Just accept it. So why is it that with zero evidence of voter fraud, Republicans are trying so hard to stop Black people from voting? Because it's a time-honored American tradition. Let's roll it all the way back. Oh yeah, it's time for your favorite part of this comedy show, History Class, bitches. I have 150 years to cover, so keep up. In 1870, the 15th Amendment gave Black men the right to vote. And right after that, Black voter registration soared. In some places, it was 90%. So white people were like, what have we done? And they invented Jim Crow laws. These laws kept Black people from voting until 1965, when civil rights activists got the Voting Rights Act passed. It had a clause called Section 5 that listed the places that had historically stopped Black people from voting and said that before those places could make any new voting laws, they had to get approval from Congress so Congress could make sure their new voting laws weren't as racist as their old ones. Because a place with a history of making racist voting laws can't be trusted to make voting laws. Just like your friend with the t-shirt that says, "It's wine 30, cannot be trusted to be the designated driver. And Section 5 worked. Finally, voting was kind of fair. Yay! But then in 2012, two things happened. The first is this. The second is that for the first time ever, Black people voted at a higher rate than white people. And that's when the modern voter suppression craze really started. All of a sudden, Republicans were like, voting is rigged. Like when a kid loses at dodgeball and is like, I think the ball is broken. So that year, in a case called Shelby versus Holder, the Supreme Court struck down Section 5 on the grounds that we didn't need it anymore because, get this, racism was over. Because, you know, if you elect one Black president and 44 white ones, that means racism is fixed. Just like if you flip a coin 50 times and I guess right one time, I'm psychic. Since that ruling, at least 1,688 counties have closed polling places, and every single one of those poll closings would have been covered under Section 5. Non-white precincts now have fewer voting machines and longer lines. They made it illegal for Black organizations to register people to vote, and they purged voter rolls. The only way they could have made it harder for black people to vote is if when you registered, they made you name 3 Beatles songs. Hey Jude, and I'll just see myself out. All this voter suppression was super successful. So successful that in 2016, this happened. But then COVID happened, and suddenly people were working to ensure everyone could vote safely. So in the last election, people used early voting, absentee voting, and mail-in voting more than ever before. And drop boxes got more love than they did when Blockbuster was open, which is why in the 2020 election, we had the highest voter turnout in a century. And which is why all of a sudden, Republicans started freaking out about voter fraud again. Because as we've learned, when there's high voter turnout, racists respond by trying to keep black people from voting. This is just history repeating itself, just like it always has. So that's how we got here, to 361 bills across the country that are designed to fight voter fraud. But you and I won't fall for that, because you and I both know that voter fraud is a myth, just like that single man with a bed frame. This has been How Did We Get Here?